Jack Elam's life came to an end. The man known as because of his sharp eyes and iconic roles in westerns. He had to overcome several obstacles. From Hollywood's bright lights and cameras, his health started to deteriorate in his final years, signaling a pivotal moment in a life that had been vibrant, humorous, and full of. Away from the crowds and the cheers, it was a silent battle. Once robust and able to endure lengthy days on set, Jack's body began to displaying signals of vulnerability that were too obvious to ignore. The lively vitality that had sustained him over decades on television and movies started to wane as heaviest. The facts of aging and disease, the beginning of congestive heart failure, everything changed with failure. It was a gradual process that infiltrated his everyday lives, making even easy chores challenging. The individual who had previously commanded attention on screen, he now needed to go slowly, save his strength, and depend on the help of those in his immediate vicinity. In spite of the physical difficulties, Jack maintained his mental be mindful. He devoted hours to thinking back on his work, going over old scripts, and recollecting happy times he had spent on set. Calls and visits were used to foster old friendships. The relationships that had influenced his life and profession continued to provide solace, informing him that his performances had won over many hearts. Jack relocated to Ashland, Oregon, in 1987. Quaint village surrounded by hills and woods. Peace came with this new chapter. Calm evenings and soft mornings took the place of Hollywood's fast-paced lifestyle. He took comfort in the slower pace of life and learned to enjoy the small things in life that had frequently been eclipsed by his career's demands and prominence. The neighbors learned to know him as a friendly and affable individual. He liked to go on walks through Ashland's streets, taking in the surroundings with the same keen focus he had previously applied to his performing. His last days required a careful balancing act between care and comfort. Jack was surrounded by his loved ones, but he had to confront the truth of silent bravery with congestive heart failure. His heart was impacted by the illness, making it difficult to breathe, but he faced every day with forbearance and perseverance. His relatives supplied steadfast assistance, keeping him warm and dignified during a time that might have been frightened and lonely. At these times, Jack's actual personality sparkled more brilliantly than any part he had ever performed. His interactions with loved ones had a gentleness to them, a mild wit that could yet brighten a space, and a contemplative calm that came from realizing that he had led a meaningful and purposeful life. However, Jack's body was fading, but his spirit was still alive. He frequently discussed his memories with fondness, recalling friends and co-workers who had influenced his path. Even as his health deteriorated, he took minor pleasures in life, like eating his favorite food. He could be watching the sun play across his house or listening to music, for those who cared for him. His quiet strength during these years made a lasting impression. When dealing with sickness, and Jack's perseverance and dignity became a part of his lasting legacy despite his mortality. SAS 1999 drew nearer, and the years went by. It became clear that Jack Elam's last chapter was coming to an end. In 2003, his body was unable to bear the burden of his sickness any longer. He died surrounded by comfort and love, leaving behind a memory that would live on forever in the hearts of fans, family, and friends. An era came to an end with his departure. However, the consequences of his life and work remained relevant. Even though Jack Elam's life came to an end, though the world remembered him, the day of his funeral and the subsequent memorial service demonstrated the extent of his impact on the screen and in people's hearts. Of his loved ones, the aftermath and the funeral. Jack Elam's passing was greeted with deep respect and silent grief. Family members and close friends attended his private funeral. Acquaintances and co-workers who had accompanied him on his lengthy career journey. The service was straightforward but sincere, a depiction of his life, which struck a balance between notoriety and modesty. With his loved ones by his side, Jack was buried in Ashland, Oregon, the community that had provided him with tranquility in his last decades. Family members were able to honor the individual during the event, honoring his life and the legacy he left behind the iconic roles behind. News of his passing spread beyond his close friends and family, spread to the general public and the film industry. Global fans shared recollections of the characters he had created and expressed sadness. His impact on character and Western's acting was widely accepted, as many considered the distinctive characteristics that had left a lasting impression on Jack Elam. Even those who had never had the opportunity to meet him felt a connection through his work, and the entertainment industry as a whole was greatly affected by his absence. Flowing tributes came from co-workers who had previously used the same screens and configurations as him. They recalled not just the performer but his generosity, humor, and kindness. Narratives of his professionalism, his readiness to coach up-and-coming performers, and his unrelenting commitment to his work depicted a person who had made a lasting impression outside of his stage work. In addition, fans paid tribute to him by sharing their favorite scenes from movies and TV series and expressing their appreciation for bringing emotion, excitement, and fun into their lives. In the days and weeks after Jack Elam's death, his legacy became even more clear. Articles and obituary inside the range of his work, highlighting his adaptability and recognizable presence. A guy whose life had touched others was revealed by the tributes both off-screen and on-screen. Ashland, his ultimate resting place, became a site of silent remembering, a location where his admirers could consider a life well lived. However, Jack's problems did not only arise in his later years, they started as soon as he was born. Jack Elam's initial struggles on a clear November day. In 1920, Jack Elam's adventure started in the tiny mine Phoenix's 85 miles east of the hamlet of Miami, Arizona. William was his birth name. Millard Elam and Alice Amelia née Kirby had a second child, Scott. Existence in this small village was characterized by communal bonds and hard effort. Jack's dad, throughout the years, Millard took up a number of jobs to help support the family. He was employed working as a millman, carpenter, and even an accountant, when needed to give his kids the necessities of life. Jack was raised in a simple setting, influenced by the family's modest but tenacious mining community and the demands of labor. In 1924, the Elams relocated to Globe, Arizona, a nearby town. From Miami, Globe was where it was. That catastrophe occurred. In September of that year, Jack's mother Alice passed away at 40, following a protracted 3-year battle with illness. The young Jack and his older sister Mildred were greatly affected by the death of their mother. Abruptly, their familiar framework was upended, and the kids were given to different family members while their father sought a fresh start and stability. The sorrow that comes with losing a parent at such age. Jack's early years made an impression that would subtly shape his personality, encouraging independence and resiliency at a young age. Life gradually found a new rhythm when Millard remarried Kansas native Flossie Vinay in April 1928. This additional obligations and problems were brought about by the new family dynamic. 2 years later, census data reveals the mixed family residing in Globe, which now includes Jack, his sister Flossie's mother, their father and their stepmother. Millard discovered a new profession as a loan company investigator. Although Flossie made a contribution by working as a teacher in public schools, Jack recognized the value of helping out around the house even as a young child. He worked on farms in the area, gleaning cotton, providing for the family, and gaining knowledge of responsibility, dedication, and persistence. Jack persevered in his studies in spite of these early setbacks. He finished his completing secondary education in Arizona, with a late 1930s graduation from Phoenix Union High School. Observing after graduating, he relocated to California to continue his education, specializing in business at Santa Cruz and Modesto junior colleges in Monica. Despite his emphasis on education, he also worked on a number of occupations that demonstrated his openness to trying new things and gaining experience. Jack was employed as a salesperson, as an accountant for the Standard Oil Company, for a home trailer agency, a manager at the esteemed Bank of America, as well as a bookkeeper at the Bear Hotel in Los Angeles. He learned abilities from each role that will help him in the future, in surprising ways. Along with his studies and job, Jack also served his nation during World War II. He enlisted in the U.S. despite having one blind eye. Served for 2 years in the Navy. This stage in his life necessitated bravery, self-control, and tenacity. This injury traumatizing turned into one of Jack Elam's most identifiable physical characteristics. The eye that initially made him his on-screen persona would later be defined by his quiet trademark of difficulties. As he became older, his left eye's muscles caused it to float farther, giving him the distinctive cockeyed appearance that his persona would become recognizable to audiences. Even while it presented difficulties for the individual, daily life and contacts a little more difficult, but it also distinguished him in a world where being unique may be the key to achievement. Jack learned to adjust to his new reality in the years after the catastrophe. The harm meant more than merely a physical restriction. It influenced his perspective on the world. He had to develop resilience, awareness, and caution. Daily chores are easy for others needed time and adaptation. In spite of these challenges, Jack didn't let his limitations be defined by the injury. He put in effort, gained knowledge, and matured, realizing that although one component despite the harm, the remainder of his potential was still present and unrealized. As Jack grew older, his distinctive eye became a part of who he was. His appearance provided him with a unique kind of individuality in a world where conformity was frequently the norm. It developed into both a challenge and a gift, an attribute of the body that sparked interest and required adjustment. Jack learned to accept his differences, although other kids could have avoided them. With time, he found that the eye that had previously brought him trouble could now draw interest, pique curiosity, and ultimately, when he arrived in Hollywood, Jack's peculiar eyes were no longer a barrier. It was a strength. Producers, casting directors, and the unique characteristic that distinguished him from other actors drew in both audiences. The identical eye that had made conversations uncomfortable as a child, but now he had a distinct on-screen personality. It was his signature, the quality that left his characters and performances indelibly etched in people's minds. In a world where faces that frequently blended together, Jack's expression was instantaneous, identifiable, and captivating. In the end, the event that initially appeared to be a setback formed Jack's professional path in ways that were impossible to foresee. The Nomadi gave his antagonists a nuanced sense of danger and depth, which enhanced his performances. He has a certain appeal in his humorous parts. It evolved into a storytelling device in itself, expressing tension, comedy, or emotion without using words. Directors as well as Jack was able to carve himself a niche that few performers could, since his fellow actors understood the power of this physical characteristic. Duplicate. His eye turned into a lens that allowed viewers to see his talent, a silent partner who complemented all his roles. Even though the expert, however, Jack never forgot the challenges the injury brought about on a personal level. He controlled his discomfort, the practical difficulties of living with a vision handicap, as well as the occasional awkwardness. But he struck a balance between these realities with dignity, tenacity, and resolve. He recognized that life will always provide challenges, but with patience and flexibility. Even the greatest unexpected setbacks might become something worthwhile. Even though they seemed to have a smooth career, Jack faced many difficulties and conflicts in his work life. Rivalries and shadows. The road to Hollywood was not an easy one for Jack Elam. He was put to the test by life, early additionally, even after overcoming adversity as a child and an injury that left his left eye blind, and fresh difficulties were ahead. Prior to his ever setting foot on a movie set, Jack had held a number of difficult occupations and harsh from bookkeeping to accounting. From hotel management to he developed a work ethic while working as a salesman that would eventually enable him to handle the demanding schedule of Hollywood. Even despite the fact that he was blind in one eye, his World War II service in the U.S. Navy demonstrated his tenacity and resolve to face life's challenges head-on. Following the conflict, after returning to civilian life, Jack worked as an accountant in the film industry, applying his commercial acumen as a freelance auditor for well-known studios. Although the position is respected and safe, put a great deal of strain on his healthy eye. Reading countless financial documents every day, he was actually in danger of becoming completely blind day after day. In 1947, he had no option but to abandon the career he had meticulously cultivated. Such a setback would have been catastrophic for many. However, Jack envisioned a fresh direction that would completely change his life. Jack was hesitant when he first started performing. He created his screen in 1949. Debut as a chorus girl in the low-budget movie She Said No, which is about her unlawful substance abuse, has disastrous results. From the beginning, he was drawn to actors that were tense, sinister, and dark. He became a fixture in gangster movies during the following 10 years. Movies and westerns, rapidly becoming known as one of Hollywood's most dependable and unforgettable antagonists. By the late 1950s, he was known to both moviegoers and media as the screen's most despised figure, a designation that mirrored his increasing proficiency of the antagonistic character. Notwithstanding his menacing on-screen persona, Jack's career was not without confrontation. He and actor Gary Cooper are embroiled in a significant rivalry that began from anger over being marginalized in the field. Jack believed his contributions were frequently disregarded. As other actors became more well-known, this friction served as a reminder of the competitive and occasionally the harshness of Hollywood. Relationships may suffer behind the cameras, and even a gifted actor like Jack had to deal with personal grievances as well as professional rivalries. One important platform for Jack's skills was television. He produced in the 1950s and 1960s countless cameos on well-known Western television shows, such as Lawman, The Rifleman, Gunsmoke, and The Lone Ranger. Zorro, The Rebel Froop Have Gun, Will Travel, Bonanza, Cheyenne, and Tales of Weeded the Texan, and Wells Fargo. These positions cemented his position in that category, enabling viewers to identify his unique appearance and passionate presence. He made an appearance as a somewhat insane bus on The Twilight Zone in 1961, Passenger, and subsequently played both imaginary and historical roles, showcasing his adaptability while preserving the sense of peril that made him so alluring. Jack's signature, his success was largely attributed to certain qualities, most notably his roving gaze and inherently dangerous demeanor. Although while many performers only used words and stage presence, Jack's his individuality made him stand out. His eye, which had previously caused him to struggle personally, and awkwardness turned into a professional strength. He caught the attention of casting directors. Viewers recalled him, and gradually the performer who had before been constrained by childhood accidents become essential to the Western genre. The Jack Elam's complicated existence. As the 1960s went on, Jack started to broaden his repertoire. As his evil parts remained popular, he started to examine humorous performances that exhibit a startling variety. In 1966, he assumed The Night of the Grizzly was his first comedy role. Additionally, he portrayed Preacher Weatheb in The Way the Next Year West, assisting renowned performers such as Richard Whitmark, Robert Mitchum, and Kirk Douglas. These parts showed a different, more competent side of Jack Elam of warmth, wit, and timing that could easily make viewers chuckle caused tension in them. Some of his most notable work was produced in the late 1960s, and he performed a sequence in Sergio Leone's 1968 film Once Upon a Time in the West. Is one of 3 spies dispatched to bring Charles Bronson's character to a close. In one, he spends a significant portion of his screen time chasing a bothersome fly in an iconic sequence, eventually capturing it within his barrel of a pistol. The incident demonstrated his abilities to be humorous as well as to make even the most sinister figures human. This harmony between humor and menace would subsequently come to define his career. In 1969, Jack continued his comedic career with Support Your Local Sheriff. In 1971, Support Your Local Gunfighter, both helmed by Burt Kennedy, and in contrast to James Garner. These movies signaled a change in his career because as humorous opportunities grew, malevolent parts progressively declined. He performed a grumpy old coup at Rio Lobo, alongside John Wayne, showcasing his versatility even more. He had become into an actor by the 1970s who could smoothly switch between an eccentric side character, a terrifying villain, and humorous counterpoint. In the 1970s and 1980s, television offered more opportunities. He played the role of a long-lost father who comes home to raise his kids in the Texas Wheelers. He had an appearance in Struck by Lightning, a sitcom. Guest roles were later added. Advertisements for the action comedy movies The Cannonball Run and Home Improvement. He portrayed quirky yet endearing characters in Cannonball Run 2. Even Jack's ability to strike a balance between humor and authenticity was seen in productions such as The Aurora Encounter,